All right. Well, happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to our after tax season webinar. Marcus, how's April 18th treating you?
And it's good. I love this week. A lot of good stuff going on our side, and hopefully people that are joining this webinar that are in obviously our industry because they're interested in this, hopefully they're joining from somewhere cool or fun, and all they've got is a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection on a beach somewhere. So that's my hope. I don't know if that's the realization or not. So.
Well, if you are enjoying this webinar from somewhere outside of your normal location, so outside of the office, let us know. That'd be fun to know. So welcome to, this is our second session in a series that we're doing, Structured for Scale series, all about team of three. And today, what Marcus and I would like to discuss with all of you is just the financial advantages of a team of three structure. And that's what we're hoping to get across. We'll be honest that this one was I don't know the best way to say it,
It's hard. I think that's the piece where we're called to do hard things, and this was no different. So we'll be sharing a lot of financial information. Obviously, accountants love that. So hopefully you get a lot out of it. And we've also built this around the questions that we've been asked throughout the years, or about like team of three and why you do it. And there's non-financial reasons to do it around time and stress level and just enjoyment of life. But we know all of you accountants love the financials too. So.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So we can't help but share those. So what we're hoping you walk away with today is at least one thing that you hear on the story that we have experienced over here at DBA. So what does it look like from an efficiency standpoint, productivity standpoint? How does the allocation of resources and the use of technology play into that? And then obviously client satisfaction, right? What does that look like as far as future business is concerned? So if I mentioned that it is number 2 in the series that we're doing. So the previous one back in February, we just did an overview of what is team of three, right? Lots of great questions came out of that. It is recorded if you'd like to go back and listen to it. What's coming up next month is more defined or more definition around the roles and responsibilities so that you can really start to piece that together and think about what does that look like inside of your firm? What do you need to tweak to make it fit for you? And then after that will be actual like implementation and execution strategy. Okay, so you put some thought into it, you define some things. All right, take a step forward. Let's start doing it if you're not already, or what are tweaks that you can make? Yeah. So that's what we have to look forward to. All right, let's give a little bit of a history. So I'm putting this out there just quickly so that we can make sure we're all on the same page here regarding what has this journey looked like for DBA, because it was not an overnight thing, right, Marcus?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we want all people to hear is that this was not overnight. And we were talking this morning that even the things that we implemented and changed since 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty after we made changes, and it wasn't like all of a sudden things got easier by any means. It was like, oh crap, now it's just a new set of challenges that we have to work through. So our hope is that the challenges that we've worked through may make your journey a little bit easier, but we're called to do hard things, and that's where we feel we are on the right track. We also talked this morning, so Amy, Rachel, and myself, this I guess 3 comes up a lot in life for us, and it seems like every 3 years in business, there's a big dramatic shift in DBA since the history, going back to like when we started the business in 2011, 2014, probably something happened, something blew up. I probably caused chaos then. 2017 was the tipping point where it was like, we have too many tax returns, too many client relationships. And then you've got 2020 where, the world was on fire. There was a lot going on, but we used that as a launch pad for DBA to go remote. We exited the audit and the test practice at that time, so we sold off that. And then shortly thereafter, we kind of leaned into this team of three model, which we had kind of been building and testing in the background. So 2021 was the start of that. So we started afresh. We had some cash flow coming in from the sale of that audit practice, which kind of helped, get us on the right track and kind of help get us on the right foot. But ultimately, we started to believe that this could really work. And we took the approach of what we had as far as clients that were already in that model, kind of served at some point. We learned a lot from, and then we started to build the team out to shift around really delegation. And we'll get into that here in a bit too, on when we start sharing the financials behind the team and everything like that. So 2022 was kind of that full delegation. Really 22 is also a build mode. So we were in client acquisition mode. We were also in team acquisition mode. And that kind of culminated to 2023. And we'll share that in a bit. So we shook things up in 2023. So we exited kind of some of the marketing and sales strategy that we had in place early 2023. We also realigned pod structure to become so much more efficient, and we'll share the numbers on that and really kind of get to where we are today in 2024, where it's not just theory or hope at this point. We're really doing this. And so hopefully that gives you just encouragement that we can be relied on as a partner in this, or an accountability partner, or just a shoulder to cry on if you need that, as you're trying to help build a better firm as well.
And it's a constant. I like that you just said, we are all called to do hard things because we all want to help others. We want to help our clients, we want to help our teams, right? And ultimately that does require that we're constantly working towards improvement. Okay, so this is just overall history, right? Which will help as we go through today and look at numbers and talk about lessons learned, which will be very important, right? Like, everyone here will learn their own lessons, but if you can take something from today to help you wherever you're at and in your phase of learning right now as you're tweaking inside of your firms. So one thing that we shared last session about the team of three overview was just an overarching, like, what were the effects on our firm for team of three? And so we boiled it down to 31% increase in efficiency, which we'll look at, 15% increase in profitability, and 99% increase in client service. And we'll talk about all of those today, but the 4-year window I just gave you is relevant because we're not going back to 2011 or 2014 or 2017, right? We're just gonna go back to 2021. It was an easy year to go back to based on the data that we easily have available to us. So.
Yeah. And it's so good because, like, when we were preparing for this webinar, and a lot of you will, I guess, get a kick out of this, I was like, did we just make these numbers up? And we did not. So these are all supported by real data. It took a little bit of searching on OneDrive to figure out where exactly we saved the data that supported these numbers, but we have those today, and that's exciting. We're not just making stuff up and saying it boldly as we go. So.
Yes, it was all out there. It's just where it was. Yes. So, okay, what we want to walk through on this slide is really just giving you a view of what you'll see on the left side of the screen. Where were we at with headcounts? Where are we at with number of clients? What's the number of clients per our headcount that could be handled? And then you'll see as our average monthly fee grew, the MRR carry per FTE, the ARR carry per FTE, those are just, if we were carrying all of that, and then our gross profit margin. So let's just walk through this one by one, and any comments that come to mind, Marcus, that you'd like to share, that would be helpful for.
Yeah, I can add color to anything, right? So I think the other piece to say within this webinar is we know that the subject is very important to a lot of the viewers. Rachel is on the other side handling questions, and if you ask a really good question that maybe she throws it to us, and we'll gladly try to address that in our time together today.
So we had full-time headcount, right? You can see our fluctuation there. Marcus, you alluded to like 2023, we had a sales and marketing team, which accounted for some of that headcount there. No, actually not really, right?
Not at
Because that's
all. Yeah.
production. Yeah.
The
Okay.
sales and marketing team was just straight overhead. So, it's one of those where if you're going to do that strategy, make sure that you've got enough powder to last the battle or the war, I guess you will. And for us, it was we've talked about that, but ultimately this is just true production headcount, people that are involved in serving clients in an accounting, tax, or advisory role.
So then we get to number of CAS clients, and really quick, I have one question for you on this because we see that it's growing, right? Which is what we would expect. What was the strategy that was used to help grow number of CAS clients as the transition from non-monthly recurring clients to monthly recurring?
Yeah, it's funny. Rachel and I just recorded a podcast earlier this week on April 15th because we just had extra time laying around, right? So the hard truth about CAS, that'll come out here probably in a couple of weeks, few weeks. And it talks through like the journey. It's not as easy as some people say that you can just convert your annual clients to monthly CAS clients. I would call that like bumper sticker advice. Like anybody can give it, anybody can say it, but what you actually learn through the process is pretty hard. So in the preparation for that, looking back, we only converted 5% of our clients from annual to monthly CAS. And so that's a good metric. Like if you can exceed that, congratulations. But for us, that's what we did. We looked at 2,000 annual client relationships, kind of getting to that 150 total mark of who we could work with on a monthly basis. Obviously, this is just CAS. We have other tax clients that we serve on a monthly basis still, but we also heavily invest in marketing and sales team at different functions and different people. So that also helped. And we view growth just as good. So growth kind of adds to the organization overall. We never wanted to be stale or stagnate with growth, and we almost force growth in sometimes some seasons of the firm. So that's what's led us to this point to be able to grow, whether it was conversion of annual clients or going out and finding our ideal new clients to work with.
And then there was a bonus tied to growth of
Yeah,
CAS
it's still
clients,
there.
right?
So it's funny, like we look back at we do an annual retreat or multiple retreats every year and kind of set out goals and strategy for the year just to make sure a team aligns. And we've always kind of had 12 to 18 new clients as a goal. And depending on the average price point of where we're at on CAS growth, we actually set aside the CAS growth as a bonus pool. And that was at one time 3 times the monthly fee for that new CAS client would go into this bonus pool, and that bonus pool would be shared with the team. The thought behind that strategy is we wanted every team member to share in those wins of new client growth and get excited, as opposed to just saying like, Marcus got a new client, hooray, I get to work more. So it's just the mindset and structuring their day to where they can allow for new growth and capacity. That was the first thought and kind of process. We've refined that a little bit as we've gone and kind of even may make additional modifications here, but we ultimately want to share that growth with the team, and that leads to great referrals. That leads to just an overall good culture of growth here at the firm.
Yeah, supports the direction, right? Everyone's on board with the direction.
Correct.
All right, I'm going to pull up the rest of these so we can just talk through them. That
Phones
way,
coming
not
out,
leaving
screen
everyone in
share, screen
suspense.
snap. Yeah.
Everyone's sitting in suspense. Just share the numbers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we can see that obviously in between 23 and 24, we just had a dip of how many clients we had per head count, which, the thing that sticks out to me, Marcus, is the ability to continue to service more clients with this structure, as opposed to losing team members between 23 and 24, and then our service starting to suffer.
Yeah, what we saw with the FTE count going down, in 22, probably early 23, we were kind of in this mindset of any growth is good. And that's not a great mindset to get into. So in 2023, we had to really see what we had built, see who we had accumulated as far as like client roster, also team, and just make sure that everybody was in the right seat, working with the right type of clients. And in Q1, Q2 of 2023, we realigned some pods. And in doing so, we had too much excess capacity to where we actually had some low performers on the team that exited. And that allowed for greater efficiency for the rest of 2023 and going into 2024 as far as a service model, production model.
So like financial advantage of team of three, not only being able to continue to service client, like a team approach, being able to service more clients, but also that realization that maybe some people were not necessarily fit for the work that was happening at DBA, that became apparent quicker, right? With the team of three approach, would you say?
It did. And the other thing to say is you try to transition both clients and team members to fit the model that you want. And sometimes people get it and sometimes people don't on both sides, right? And it just may not align with what they want personally as a career or as a service, right? And so no hard feelings. You just have to get beyond that and do what's best for that person or that business and for you as a business. So those are some of the conversations, some of the learning that we did over those years. Ultimately, where we landed is you want people that believe in the structure that you're building. They understand why you do what you do. And some people that join at different parts of that journey may not grasp fully what you're trying to build. So that's another piece that I would make sure as you're implementing change in your organization that you continue to speak into that change and why it's necessary.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, there's our 31%, Marcus, and our 15%
We didn't make it up,
increase.
right? So all the calculators come out, check our math. So, but yeah, overall, the build, right? During a build phase, you may become less efficient just as you're accumulating both clients and maybe team members to build capacity. What we did, we looked at 2023 and said, okay, we're building, which is great, but we're not being effective. We're not being efficient. And so we had to make small tweaks and kind of get back onto the path of building where we wanted to go. And yeah, so those were the small changes that we had to make. We had to make those hard decisions sooner. I wish they would have been done sooner than later, but it is what it is.
So there's 15% increase in gross profit margin. Where's all that going now, Marcus?
I wish it was going to the bottom line, but unfortunately it's not. So, we do reinvest in our team. We try to do great things. We're actually taking the whole team on a team trip to Florida this year. And so there's those incentives for just being a part of a healthy, growing, profitable organization that we want to, give back to the team overall. I would say whenever we look back at 2021, I guess, to where we are today, technology and software costs they stand out as far as like dramatic increases over that 4-year period to where, being more profitable just goes straight to our technology vendors for the most part right now. And you constantly have to evaluate who those technology partners are and are you being resourceful in what you use and to its fullest extent. So that kind of hits on one of the learning objectives that we talk about, but just the cost to operate any business from 2020 to 2024 is much more than it was. And so that's unfortunately where a lot of that additional gross profit is going.
Yeah, technology fees are not going to decrease, right? But the use of technology inside of our firms can continue to evolve so that we're
Yeah.
making the most use of that.
Well, refine and who pays for what. I think that's the other part that you have to get realistic on. And so if you're absorbing a lot of client technology costs, which could be passed on to them, our approach now is we're not going to pay for someone's QBO subscription. Like it's just much easier for them to handle that and invite us in. And then if there ever is a separation in relationship, they own that. It's not even a question of whose work papers it is. Like all those old, you know, crappy conversations that we used to have. It's just, hey, that's your file, like good luck. So, but in doing so, like they're paying into it directly. You know, it's just all of that is kind of coming off of our P&L, and we're able to understand what our firm technology costs versus like client technology costs, and you know, monitor that a little bit better.
Yeah, makes it more clear, right? All right, Rachel's going to launch a poll for us. We have some questions for you. This session does not qualify for CPE, but polling is still fun. So our question, what is our question? On average, how many production team members work on a business client? And by that, we mean, you know, a CAS client. And while everyone's answering that poll, Marcus, I have a couple of questions for you that are just coming in through the questions panel.
Okay.
So yeah, you're in the hot seat. Are you ready?
Love it.
We showed on the screen that we have CAS clients of 85 total clients. Is that our total client base, or do we have other clients?
No, so those are, I would say, business or client family relationships, which, as many of you know, like there may be multiple entity, multiple business activities kind of going on within that number. We also have a client base of tax clients that we serve on a monthly basis within a pod-like structure. And so that's not CAS, that's not growing as well. Like we continue to evaluate that. Just those are great client relationships that we've maintained, and it's only about 10 to 12 families. And so that's kind of the other piece of our practice, I guess, if you will. And you've run numbers on that even here recently through April 15th, kind of show the journey of where we were heavy tax. I think we were 80% tax at one time with all revenue up through April 15th, 20% A&A, which we did have an audit practice at that time, to where we're at today. We actually flipped that to where it's 80% CAS, 20% tax through April 15th. So
yeah, that's impressive. Okay, our poll results. We have about half of our attendees today, 2 to 3 people touch a business client. So already operating team of 3 approach, which is awesome. Thank you, Rachel, for launching that. Yeah.
That my initial question, and you know, our friends are recovering from tax season likely. The 25% that was 1 to 2 people, what happens when that 1 to 2 people leave? If that's not the owner of the firm, you know, it's like, what does consistency and engagement look like? And so those are some of the reasons to think through a team and mentality. So I do love the fact that 75% are more than that, just 1 to 2%, 1 to 2 people.
Yeah, that's a good call out there. Okay, let's get into just pricing, because this is everyone's, you know, it's an art form. Let's try to put some more data around it, is what we've done in this session today. So,
you know, it's funny because if you look at my background, I was Big Four, EY, and then quickly left EY because we started a family. Rachel and I are high school sweethearts, had kids really young. And so then I left to go to a smaller office that is a little bit smaller than where DBA is today, but I rolled into the audit role, kind of led the audit practice eventually, and then rolled over into the tax role and led that tax practice. Part of my journey during that 6 years at that firm is I was given the keys to pricing. I learned how to do pricing, and so I was given that authority to whatever I could support is what I ultimately priced. And the reason why I learned it was because I got 45% of my billings at that firm. So as far as like learning the system and learning the game and all of that, I did that in my 20s, and I'm so thankful for it. And kind of the art, so to speak, I learned that at a really young age. So that carried over to DBA. We are not the cheapest. And so I will just say that, like, we have always been aggressive on price. And part of that is just, some of what I learned throughout my career and being comfortable and confident in how you deliver that. But you've got to learn pricing, and you have to, when you deliver a price, you have to be able to stand behind it. And sometimes that pricing almost has to make you throw up. Just because there's been situations where it's like, they'll never go for this, like this number's insane, and they go for it. And the thing to keep in mind there is accountants are usually so conservative, and all of you can do your own accounting and tax work, so you don't value what you do, but others may. And so it's one of those things where, like, you really have to get out of that mindset and put yourself in another situation to really bill or price what you're worth, to that individual situation or to the market as a whole.
So what would you say your biggest things are that you've learned over your many, many years of working
So
your
it's
heart
not,
off pricing?
yeah, it's not about
Besides like
pricing.
not throwing out.
It's not about pricing what you're worth. It's about pricing what your team is worth. And so I think that's the other shift for us, that I will outprice anybody all day long because I know our team is worth it. I may not be worth it. I may just be full of it and just kind of like dancing through and getting paid for stuff that I'm not worth. But the team, they crush it every day, and they earn every penny on that invoice. So that's been a shift over the years, kind of like, if you think about my journey and getting 45% of billings, all of that, like, to where we're at today, and like what's an appropriate budget for the team to not burn out and have the right amount of work and have the right amount of budget so that they have good days and good weeks and can kind of get through life, and get through tax season. That's one of the pieces where our team, it's almost embarrassing with some of the people on this call, but I think we filed 130 1040s. Is that right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yes.
yeah,
There's 421 tax returns
yeah.
total, business and
Um,
individual.
so compare that back to, well, would you say 430?
420.
But that's not through April 15th. Like, some of
Right.
those, yeah, some of those are also extended. But yeah, not huge numbers, and it's just we shifted to allow for that compared to the tax season in 2017, where we filed over 1,000 tax returns before April 15th and invoiced over $1 million before April 15th. So it's just a constant shift from the business that we wanted to build, like what we accidentally built, to where we are today. And pricing is so important. Even in tax, the tax margins are great if you price the right way. It's just what is the right amount of tax for any
Right.
practice, right? And so we've tried to define that. The tax season that we just had with our 130 clients who love us and got tax returns filed. No Saturdays were worked that I was aware of by the team, and we still kept half-day Fridays for the most part. I think there was a couple instances where a team member logged in extra, but it was probably because they had something else during the week that pulled them away from their screen, at another time.
We're gonna have to circle back to this half day Friday thing. I'm unaware of this.
Hey, it doesn't apply to certain roles in the team.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so biggest takeaways here is pricing. If it's hard to price for your own value, price for the value of your team, because it's easier to think about other people sometimes. So that was
Yeah.
my biggest takeaway of what you said. I hopefully others
Well,
have
and
pulled
you also have
something
to look
from.
at industry. What client type can support the budget that you want to have? We've always used the 1 to 2% kind of as the threshold for services. So, we've stayed away from new starts because we just know that our budget doesn't align with them. And so it's, after a practice is making 1.8 or more, then we do become a viable option and can be a great part of their team, their outsourced team. I remember back, like, we were still in office, a dermatology client who's still a client today. They came in through a referral, and it was, I think, the middle of tax season. So price testing in the middle of tax season is always great because you're frustrated, you can't do any more, and you really get to see how far you can go because you don't care if you lose the client or not. So this client actually asked Rachel to come out to their office to present the kind of service offering and everything like that. And after, I think it came down to pricing conversation, and it was just something so crazy at that time. I think it was like $4,500, and we didn't have any other CAS clients like over 1,500. And I think it was like 4,500. They're never going to go for it. Just get them off the call and let's move on. And then she delivered that price and they're like, okay, what are next steps? Like just boom, boom, boom. And you're like, oh crap, so they're still a client today. Dermatology is actually a really profitable line for us, but just one of those where price test whenever you feel that you're at capacity, because then maybe that $4,500 win, you can get rid of some $800 clients who just can't go up with you. So
Yeah. Okay, let's look at a breakdown of pricing a little bit more because some questions are coming in about like determining pricing and hopefully the next upcoming slides are helpful, but we can continue to elaborate. So pricing is still important, right? What we see on the screen here is just a breakdown by role. So inside of our team of 3, we have our CSMs, client service managers, doing the daily accounting work. Controller is focusing primarily on tax related and review of monthly financials. And then our CFOs doing highest level meetings with clients, right? And just kind of a breakdown. So talk us through, Marcus, here, how we've arrived at these multipliers, these production percentages, these role budgets, and where you're at with them, because I know this has been an evolution inside.
Yeah, no, it's good. So this is real data, right? And so this isn't any one client. This is made up of just where we're actually at for a whole pod or, a partial pod in some instances. So, but this is the multiplier is we want a CSM to actually to cover themselves 4x, but then you're also applying how much of that's production time or effective utilization. So if you take, I think we line this out in the next slide, so the people will geek out over the actual formulas. But if you take that, it's a multiplier. Usually you want to bill at least 3 times is kind of the industry standard, right? But for CSMs, we start at 4. And then production, we want them 85% utilized. We want 15% for either time off or professional development. Kind of constant learning is always encouraged. And then what we've seen, and this is kind of the hard truth for me, is right now we're at a realistic budget. They own about 50% of that annual client budget. And when we say annual client budget, because controller picks up a little bit more during, tax filings and different things that are going on. If it's a quarterly CFO touch point, CFO's hitting the budget. So you have months where CSM may be 70, 80% of that month's budget, but then you may have months where they're much less because other people are kind of hitting, the old school like charge code, right? They're hitting the budget, so to speak. So that's what we've seen. We continue to make sure, like, how can we increase CSM as a part of the budget, or really how do we minimize controller? How do we make sure CFO is the right balance?
Yeah, so when we say like role budget, right? If we're billing that client $2,000 a month, $1,000 of that monthly billings is allocated to the CSM role. And so, that will feed into the next slide when we get to the next slide.
Yeah, and we're not, this isn't a textbook scenario. So as Amy was kind of working through and running all these numbers, it's really just a rite of passage to kind of get frustrated with these calculations within DBA. I've done it, other people have done it. And so, but ultimately it is helpful to see where we're at and how it's improving, and how do you use this to make changes, continue to evolve, and to get more profitable.
I think what was really interesting from my standpoint was being able to run through this and see how tweaking your monthly fee can affect gross margin, can affect how many clients a team member has to handle, and what can that look like, right? I mean, it's just, sure, nothing ever is 100% going to line up for all of the clients across your database, but neither is a process. You can design a process and there will always be exceptions to standardization that you're trying to implement inside of your firms. So it was interesting. I mean, this does tie out. What I think is also fascinating here is that the bulk of the budget is essentially on CSMs. We're not trying to bill our CFOs out at a huge multiplier and
Yeah.
make a ton of money there.
So I'm going to touch on that point because I think it's important. So what we've kind of embraced as like our team of three model at DBA is not what some would call the fractional CFO practice that's in the market and taught. That may be good for you where you're at, a fractional CFO practice. What I see and what I chose not to build around that was it's more of consulting. It's more aligned around any one person. If we would have built that out, the CFO would be majority of the production budget, and they would kind of have helpers, right? They would have people that allowed them to interact with the client. So team of three is definitely not the fractional CFO model that is taught by some, and really could apply to like a solopreneur. We didn't want that in our business. We wanted something beyond just creating ourselves a job. And that's important to know. And it's not a knock on people that pursue that. It's just, that's not us. And so that's why you can see like 10% max roll budget on our CFOs allows us to scale and to kind of help more people and add value throughout the year and having these conversations. And it's really what most CPAs are probably doing, but not getting paid for in their firms with clients on an annual touch point. So we just did that and we kind of built it into the budget. The other like just on this slide, the talking points between why a controller is at 70%, they do a lot of leadership, they manage a team. It's not appropriate for them to be at 85, 90%. That's when burnout happens. So we built that in. Same thing goes for the CFO. So myself and Leslie, 45% of our time is spent, leading others. And that's the piece where as we built this out, and even it's most likely that an owner would sit in a CFO role for a season or as they grow the pod. You don't want to create yourself another job, so like that was the realization as we built this out and kind of made sure that we were staying true to these different budgets that we really kept in mind.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at this formula. So, I mean, the question that comes all the time is how many clients should a team member handle, or how many clients could a pod handle, right? Now, this is just focused on team member. But if you think of in our team of three overview, I don't have a slide here to show, right? But just the structure of a pod would be 2 CSMs to a controller, actually 4 CSMs to 2 controllers to a CFO.
Yeah, that's a full pod. Yeah,
that's a full pod. All right, so the formula, if you would like to create this in an Excel file, because we're all Excel whizzes, right? But
hey, I learned how to do a pivot table for the first time yesterday. I am dangerous in Excel, and like all the people, yeah. So
all the beautiful pivot tables are going to come out now.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, this is to Marcus, what you were just talking about, right? What's the salary? What's the multiplier we want for that role? What's the production percentage we're comfortable with based on what we're building for ourselves here? And then, okay, what is that for 1 month, right? Because that's the full year that we would like to bill them out at. So let's get the month of that. And so what is our average monthly fee on our CAS clients, or whatever you call them? And so what's their budget? What's that role's budget there? So like in our example, if our monthly fee, which Marcus, I think you shared this before, we can't do a CAS client for less than $2,000 a month, right? Was the realization.
We can, but it's an annual touch point. So I think that's the thing to keep in mind. We definitely can't serve a client under 1,000, and that's just where we're at.
Based on where we want our team to be and the workload that we want everyone to.
Correct. Yeah, so you could go below that if you wanted more workload, right? And I think that's just the piece where we kind of had to define that for us and stay true to who we want to be.
Yeah. All right, so we've seen this formula. Now we're going to do a case study. So, and this is where, as we shared at the beginning, this was a fun session to prepare for. because one, I had to pull all this information out of Marcus. And two, just looking at different clients. So we're going to do a case study on a dental client, because this dental client, one, we have a dental niche, and two, is pretty standard as far as if we looked at trying to find consistency in our client base. Is that a fair statement, Marcus?
No, that's exactly right. So obviously people talk about, niching down a lot and riches in the niches. This kind of supports that because you can build up a team or a leg of a pod and serve an industry and then build up efficiencies and effectiveness within that leg of a pod or within the pod itself. And so this holds true to that versus accepting too many different industries, too many different client types. That's what we saw in this case study.
Yeah. So what you'll have here as these numbers start to come up, and I'll feed them. I think they all feed, yeah. So we have years, full years, and then, but because we're looking at things in percentages for most of these numbers, I also have Q1 of 24, just so that we could look at this, right? So it is a full calendar years for the other 2 years. So
Yeah.
you'll see just a couple things to point out, and then Marcus, I'll let you chime in here. The monthly fee continues to increase, except we have 22 and 23. We didn't do any fee increases on this client, right?
Which is why you can see the realization tick down.
Exactly, down at the bottom there. So then the other thing to point out, number of team on a client, right? If we think back to the beginning of the session, we gave you a history of 2021 is when this idea really started to take off, right? So we knew in 2020 a change needed to happen. 2021 is when we started it. But because of the shifting around and trying to figure that out, we had 7 people touching this particular client, 7 production people, okay? And then we get to 2022, so we're refining that, but we're only down to 6. And then 2023, we have 4. So technically we have a team of 3, but the reason why we have 4 people that touch it is because this includes the individual return. And so Deidre on our team helps with all the individual returns, and then the controller is reviewing that individual return. So that's why there's 4 people there. But I thought that trend, like if we just look at the trend as we're figuring things out, right? We're continually tweaking, we're delegating work, we're reducing the number of people touching it. It also does have an effect on realization there as well, and pricing plays a part of that.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say, Q1 is historically your least realized quarter because you've got likely tax projects in there. So you're kind of recovering the remainder of the year from maybe some Q1 realization being a little bit lower. So I think looking at this case study, it's great that we're already back above where we were for 2022 in Q1, and hopefully it just builds from there. This client, this case study, not only has their 1040, their S corporation for their dental practice, it also has payroll involved. And so some people think through like, I've got a payroll department, I've got a payroll kind of point person, they're not a part of the accounting team or the tax team. That is part of the reason why we also shifted away. And you can see that with the number of team members that serve a client. The other part being more intrinsic, that the knowledge base is kept inside of a smaller group of a team of 3. So, but yeah, this one's got payroll on it as well. So I think those are the main things to kind of keep in mind. We see that the CSM, which is our dental CSM, she kind of remains consistent from year over year. 2023 may have had something out of the ordinary, and just like you do with a client when you're kind of advising them and reviewing different data, you want to look at it like not just 1 month, you want to look at it over a time period, whether that's quarterly or annual. So that also helps kind of build in like what's really happening, what are the trends that we see. And nothing's going to be perfect. There's never a textbook scenario. Every 2 clients are different, even if they're in the same industry, have the same team size. It's just they may have different needs. And I think you have to approach all of this with almost a range in mind of what's acceptable. And so whenever we did this case study, like the range or the results are right within the range that we would accept, right? So I think 60 to 65% on a CSM is really, really good. On the controller, 30% sweet spot, that's great. And then CFO, 5 to 10, depending on what's going on and the needs of the client. Are they in growth mode? Are they looking to acquire additional, associates in their practice? Are they looking to add a location? All of that kind of goes into it. Or are they just on maintenance mode? And you can kind of serve that client really well with not much as far as touch point.
Yeah. So Ben's asking a good question. What was the top line revenue for this dentist? I almost included where our fee was at, like percentage wise. So I don't remember exact top line. I don't have it up on my other screen, but I know that our fee was slightly over 1%.
Yeah. So this, for those of you that serve dental clients, he is an owner doctor looking toward succession, probably the next 3 to 5 years. That's also why it's important for us to be on the team. Has brought in an associate, likely will transition the practice to associate. He also has a traveling specialist that comes in and does procedures. So that's some of the dynamics. I would say he's probably grown from 1.5 to I think 2.3 in 2024. A lot of that is with associate growth. And so, which just lends to like, so many people ask like, well, what do you talk about in the CFO quarterly calls or meetings? This client has actually become a friend. And so we'll go to lunch and, he's local enough that I'll leave my home office and we'll go grab something. But we talk about, what does his work day look like? What does his workload look like? And I think the other realization that we've seen, and it makes it so much easier to sell this model into clients, is whenever the client is growth minded or they've got an event coming up in 3 to 5 years. And if you know that, you can also, that 3 to 5 year timeline, they're not going to be a client for 10 years. So maybe you can be a little bit more aggressive on price. You can make sure that you're adding value up until the point where they may no longer be a client anymore. But then also in a dental office, the doctor could do everything, right? They could do everything from hygiene. They could do everything that a dental assistant does. They could even do invoicing, billing, QBO support. Most of our clients are in a delegation or mindset where they want to bring in people and they want to delegate their time. So that's who we look for in our ideal client, like our prospect phase, are who's growing in that manner where they're also delegating tasks that they may do in their practice, because then they value us that much more as well.
Yeah, similar, right? Similar mentality to what is inside here.
We've never done well with the person who wants to do it all. You have to show value every call.
Yeah, with a grinder. Someone who wants to grind. All right, we have another poll and we have 12 minutes left, Marcus. What is the hardest part about delegation for you? So this is a great question, perfect timing. There is an other option. So if you do choose other, feel free to fire through the questions what that is, right? It looks like right now, need to develop a team member is definitely leading here. Marcus, what was the hardest thing for you for delegating?
For delegating, I think I'm probably right in line with developing team members. We all tell ourselves the quick lie that it's just easier for me to knock this out and move on, as opposed to teaching somebody how to do it. So as I've matured in life, and I say that lightly, I know how important it is to spend time with others and kind of take what's in my brain and, obviously share that so that, people are better, are better than I found them, essentially. So
yeah, I like that. Leaving people better than when they started.
When you met them, yeah.
Yeah, when you met them. That's good. All right, so we see 68% needing to develop a team member. Followed next, 18 trusting a team member to do the work.
Yeah.
All right, thank you everyone for sharing. So let's get into a few more items today. Just resource optimization is where we're at here, right? And I think what what I would love for you to share with everyone, Marcus, is just building on technology that can support the growth. And so what have we learned here regarding the technology that we're using with our clients?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you have to use technology that you can. I hate, I've learned to not like the word scale. I think it has a negative connotation. So if anybody has a better word for scale, please share it. But something that you can use across multiple clients and fully utilize, learn it, coach your team how to learn it the best way possible, and really using all different functionalities of the software. I think that's something we look at now versus like in the early days, like we would accept people on QBD and like we didn't care that they were on QBO and they use their own internals, like just all that nonsense. Like, no, it is QBO. And some people may say for them it's zero, just whatever that is for you and your team. We've also kind of shared, like we went from $100,000 in software costs, like computer cost, to now last year was $260,000 in total cost. How are we utilizing the appropriate amount of budget? And are there pieces of software that clients don't value, but you continue to use them because you value them more than the client? I think you have to ask yourself those hard questions and start to really understand what the client needs and wants. We have seen a shift to where the client would rather spend time going over data, however it's presented, whether it's a fancy FP&A software or if it's just raw data out of QBO dropped into Excel. They would rather spend time with you going over that and kind of understanding and asking questions versus you spending your time creating a report that they're never going to look at. And so it just goes back to what pieces of software were we only using for like one or two clients and phasing those out. What software can we use better, and phasing out the other pieces that we aren't kind of using as well. And then maybe we've done an experiment. Like we said, hey, we're going to start using this software and we paid for it and we're still paying for it monthly, but we really never adopted it, never put it into practice. It's probably time to exit the experiment and stop paying for the software. And we'll do that occasionally with different things and then revisit them whenever we have the capacity to go test again. But in the meantime, stop paying the software companies. So I think that's the hard truth about the budget is limited, or it should be, and just utilizing what you have to the best of your ability.
Better utilizing it, right? All right, Noah has shared that a better word is maximize growth.
That's like 3 words.
Maximize growth.
Okay.
It's 2.
Yeah.
3. Okay. All right, let's talk about client service. So the other number that we shared was 99% increase in client service. And so if we have satisfied clients, tell us this story. How were we able to increase prices 450% over the course of a client relationship? And that client's still a really good client, right?
Yeah, he was one of our first CAS clients. Back before, like, I have to think about in terms of what office I was sitting in to kind of understand where I was. And it was probably 2016, 2017 when he came in the door and said, hey, he had started a business, sold it, wanted to do it different the second time around when he was starting his new business, and he just wanted to outsource that. And he thought we could be the solution for it, which we're like, we didn't tell him, but he was probably like our first or second CAS client. We're like, oh yeah, we do that. And so sometimes you just gotta go with it. We started him at $1,500. So it was a specialized professional service business, and he was growing. We did payroll, we did accounting and tax, and then we also did bill pay through bill.com for $1,500, and we lost so much money.
Wait, so we had him on QBO and ADP and bill.com. Well, Bill, but yeah.
Yeah, and he actually, he's become a friend as well. We've learned a lot through him from the years, and his life today, he credits us with being part of how his life is structured. He actually wakes up, works out, goes to the office, kind of may do things like be involved with meetings, but by noon, he's already either at lunch or on the golf course. So he spends about 2 hours a day in his business, if that. And then he'll have he'll go to the ranch and different things. But yeah, we started him at 1,500, and over the different years, I think he's now at 6,500 a month. So we invested in him early on, and we grew with him. I mean, he's got over 100 team members now. He's a very niche professional service. He's got a good life, and he values delegation to his leadership team. He considers us part of that team as well, and so he values everybody on our team that way. But he has great things to say, and it's just one of those where we continually poll him, whether it's through verbal, through meetings or through software. Like where we got the 99% from was actually the NPS surveys that we sent out, and we'll send those out throughout the year just to make sure that we are staying true to our level of service that we want to have with clients. But this particular example, it shows how that high level of service you can actually grow from that $1,500 a month to 6,500, 7,000. I can't remember where we're at with him total, but yeah, and when we just recently did price increases for him, he always jokes, right? Because everybody is like, it's just money. And he actually was like, hey, at the end of the day, can't wait to see what we achieve in 2024. And we went up, $1,000, $2,000 a month here just recently, because I started meeting with him on a monthly basis. And so it's just one of those clients that they trust you fully. And maybe some people on this call have those clients that they would allow you to experiment with. And it goes back to you do for one or a few what you wish you could do for many. And that's the piece where maybe there's just a small handful of clients that you have to start with and build a team, build a pod around, and see how it goes. We're here, we're sharing all of the stuff along our journey just to kind of make sure that you stay in line with what we've seen and what we've seen others, but they're out there and they're probably in your client list. And don't think that you're going to convert your whole client list. Go convert one or two first.
Yeah, start with one. Start with one, right? All right, we have one last poll for you. So this poll is really, what's your priority focus? It's coming up. What's your priority focus coming out of tax season, after you unwind here? There is no other option. So if you had to pick one of those.
This is probably too many options already,
What would you pick, Marcus? Where are you at?
Where's vacation, right? I don't see that one. So no, it's constant improvement for us. So we're always looking workflows, processes. What are we learning? Coming out of tax season, it wasn't how brutal was that or how successful it was. It was what did we learn? And I think constantly asking that question of yourself throughout the year kind of helps you improve. So.
All right, it looks like it's pretty split though. We have about improved workflows and processes, and then that's 46%, 43 onboard more ideal clients. So
yeah, no, that's good.
Get better clients. All right, let's talk really quick. We'll wrap up here, right? So Marcus, you were just talking about lessons learned, right? And if I had to summarize, what I have seen is, and what you've communicated to me, also like in preparation of this, but just over the years, price more aggressively. So if it's not hard, you're probably not being as aggressive, or you're not stepping far enough outside of your comfort zone. I think that's probably a better way to say it, right? Like if it seems easy, it's because you need to take another step.
Yeah, and price is tied to value. So, you can't just throw out a crazy number. You actually have to back it up. So.
And then what I really appreciate seeing is this delegate more. It has been fun to talk to everyone to hear how the evolution of delegation happened, right? It's just, okay, we're going to start doing one thing. We're going to push one thing to a CSM. Then we're going to push another thing. And then we're going to push something to a controller, right? And so it's just delegate more. Take the time to share the knowledge to be able to delegate.
So when we look at profitability and margin, the largest margin of profitability is at the CSM level for us. And so we're trying to delegate as much as we can from CFO, controller to CSM. What can a CSM give to somebody else, an assistant, all of that? That's the constant process of improvement. Because if you go back to that slide where I want the CSM really not at 50, I want them at 60 on total budget, because
Yeah.
profitability is higher at the CSM level. So, and there's just more qualified candidates that we can create a CSM role for compared to controller and client CFOs.
Yeah. All right, so how do you get started, right? You've listened to a lot. Evaluating pricing, we talked a lot about that today. Create client consistency. So that is, 2 or 3 people touch clients, and how do we make sure that the same 2 or 3 people are touching them if there's opportunity there? And then check out our free resources. There's some team of 3 ones that are available to you out on our website, free to download. So, all right, we have upcoming May 16th, we'll get into roles and responsibilities and just dive farther into that. Like, what does everyone actually do? What does that look like? And then implementation and execution of it all. So any parting thoughts, Marcus, you'd like to leave us with today?
I would just say congratulations, one, for coming out of whatever you just came out of. Maybe it was your best tax season ever. Maybe it was your worst tax season ever. Either way, there's room for improvement. It sounds like most people are in that mindset of how do I improve? How do I get better? Reach out if you need help. Like, we've got the resources there. Please take advantage of those. And then any other way that we can help you, that's what we're here for. Just happy to be that resource.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And Marcus, thank you so much for today. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thanks so much.